All right, and I see it's just about 1 o'clock, so we'll start in a minute.
Hey, Stacy.
Hello.
Hi. Brittany, can you run through our list of committee members for Committee A, please?
Yes, give me 1 second.
Sure. It just looks like we're missing 2 currently. Just want to double check the numbers.
So we have Sally and we have Sarah. Carl, I don't know if he hopped on yet. Emery.
I don't see that.
I don't see Emery. Stacy, I see Stacy. Bill is on, and Ayakia.
And Sarah.
So I think yes, I got Sarah. I think we're just missing Carl and Emery, perhaps.
Perfect. That's what I was thinking.
Cool.
Okay, and we'll hope that they hop on before long. Let's get started. Hi, welcome. Thank you very much for being here and being a part of this. This is both going to be fun and challenging because it's really important work that we do. It was mentioned, as a matter of fact, at the County Commission meeting this morning that we were meeting at 1 o'clock today. And I know that we will be watched over by a lot of members of the community, certainly the county commissioners and others. And of course, we want to do the best job that we possibly can. And I know that you will do that. This is a public meeting, and Brittany, you might read. Yes. Are you there, Brittany?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, there you are. Would you mind reading the public statement?
Absolutely, I will. This is a public meeting and it is being recorded. The organizations whose applications are being reviewed may be asked to participate in the meeting by providing comments when asked questions by the Pinellas Cares Nonprofit Partnership Fund Grant Committee. If you're attending the Zoom meeting via computer or other smart device, you will be unmuted to allow you to respond back to any given questions from the Grants Committee. And this will take place in the Zoom app, and you will have 3 minutes to respond to each question. If you are attending the Zoom meeting by phone only, this is very important that you will be unmuted, but then you will have to press *6 on your end to unmute yourself. At that point, you will also have 3 minutes to respond. At the conclusion of any comments, you will be muted again. For those of you who are viewing the meeting via YouTube or recording, and you would like to provide feedback on the grants process, please feel free to submit your comments to caresfeedback@pinellascf.org, and we will respond to your comments as soon as possible. This feedback will not be answered live. We'll make sure to take note of that email, caresfeedback@pinellascf.org. Back to you, Sally.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you very much. And I just want to emphasize that this is a public meeting, so we are being transparent purposefully. We want everybody to know what we do, how we do it, what our discussion has been. And if anyone has worked under Government in the Sunshine, which I have, you know that this is a part of who we are. And particularly when we're giving away this important piece of information as well as dollars, we want to be sure that we're everybody knows what we're doing, how we're doing it, what our thinking is. So remember that we're going to be transparent. Everybody will see us and can see us again in the future, right, David? If we're on YouTube, so they can go back and look at us again, see what we said. So I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves, if you don't mind. I'll begin, and I actually, Duggan tried to call me the chairman of this group, but I call myself the lead dog. So if you'll just let me be a lead dog, and you can run beside me, not follow me, but run beside me. I think that will be a very good thing. I'm a former county commissioner. I serve on a number of boards. I've been on the Pinellas Community Foundation and many grants review boards and committees rather. And I love the foundation and I think they do excellent work. And so I think they were most appropriate to be the people in charge of the CARES Act funding for not-for-profit organizations. And I know that all of you will do great work. Let me start with the staff. Duggan, maybe you want to introduce yourself first. And I know you may not be able to stay for the whole meeting. I'm sure you've got other fish to fry today. So
I'll be here for the duration, Sally.
Okay.
And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Duggan Cooley. I'm the CEO of the Pinellas Community Foundation. And we have a wonderful team assembled of staff to work on this Pinellas Cares nonprofit partnership fund. And I just want to reiterate my thanks to all of you for your participation in this effort. Our goal really is to get this money out to the community and in the hands of organizations that are doing so much to help people right now. The community needs a lot of help, and we appreciate you being a part of this to make sure that we do it right, and that we make sure that we get this in the hands and in the right hands to do great things for our community. So thank you.
Thanks. And let me go to David, and then I'll get some of the other folks here. David, are you there?
Yes, I'm David Bender. I'm the Director of Grants and Projects here. I'm doing kind of back-end work for this. I'm not the main contact person. I'm not overseeing it, but tweaking along the way in the grants portal, kind of handling the tech is what my role here. Normally, I handle PCF's other grant processes.
Yes, and you are well acquainted with the grant processes for
yes.
sure. Okay, Brittany, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am. My name is Brittany Baldwin. I am the program associate, and I've been working very closely with David and Cherie to ensure that you guys are getting all the emails, have any questions about Cherie. So we appreciate you guys, and we appreciate all the work you've done so far. Please do not hate me for my emails. I just want to make sure you guys have everything you need. Yeah, so that's about it. I'm going to kick it over to Cherie.
Cherie?
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Cherie Wright-Jones, and I am serving as the Senior Program Officer for Pinellas Cares. And so I am here if you have additional questions about the application or about the organizations. I am here. Brittany and I are tag teaming and first points of contact and to give and or give out information regarding Pinellas Cares to help organizations through the technical assistance portion as well. And I do want to kick it over to Dr. Barbara Morrison Rodriguez, who is serving as our independent evaluator on the project. Dr. Morrison Rodriguez?
Yes, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
oh,
ma'am,
yeah.
we can.
Okay, so I'm the evaluation consultant on the project, and it's my job to review the applications with a particular attention to the areas having to do with evaluation and measurement, where you let us know how you're planning to measure your progress as you move along, provide evidence to us that the services you're delivering are being provided, and most of all, that the recipients of those services are reaping the benefits that you have told us should accrue to them based on what you do. My role also is to serve as an evaluation consultant. From time to time, I'll review an application where I'm going to ask for more evaluation information, or you may be struggling with some measures that you want to use. And I think this is particularly true for the behavioral health component of the program, that I'm available to assist you and answer any questions. So that is my area of expertise, and I invite you to get in touch with me as you need to.
Welcome. Thanks, Barbara. And is that the staff? Well, let's start with Ayako.
Good afternoon. I am Ayakio Watkins. I am a local pastor here in the community in Largo. My church is located in Largo. I have been working in this community since 1981. I spent 14 years at Honeywell, and the last 25 years working in social services. I've been a part of many community organizations such as Healthy Start, the health department, Suncoast Hospice, just have been involved in social services for about 25 years after leaving Honeywell and raising my son. I'm excited to be a part of this process, and I look forward to learning and gleaning from all of you.
Thank you, Anko. Bill?
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Sturdivant. I'm the president of Senior Citizen Services, a foundation that started 1960, primarily activity organization. But about 6 years ago, we were losing members. They moved to the Long Center, so we got together and transitioned into a foundation. Over the last 5 years, we've granted out to seniors 55 and over to Pinellas County, a little more than $2 million. We think we've done a very good job. However, our board was getting a little older and we were losing some board members to retirement. So we sat down and we looked at the possibility of transitioning to a major foundation. And after an exhaustive RFP process, PCF came in first place unanimously. We're very pleased to be a part of PCF. One of the conditions was that a board member from SCS join the board of PCF, and I was the one selected, and I'm very, very thankful. This is a very positive thing for this time in my life. I enjoy it. I want as much of it as I can get. However, I'm kind of the newbie, so bear with me. I don't want to make any mistakes, but I'm very happy to be here, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Sarah?
Hi, everyone. My name's Sarah Gordills. I work with Pinellas County Human Services in their Contracts and Planning Department. I work mainly with behavioral health and substance use contracts currently funded by the county. Before that, I worked with the county's Justice Coordination on a lot of the drug court grants and the medical examiner's office. So I have some insight on the administrative side of things, but I'm looking forward to learning more about what's available in the county and with all of you.
Thank you. And Stacy?
Hello, I'm Stacy Efall, and I work for Habitat for Humanity of Pinellas and West Pasco counties. Before that, I worked for the Humane Society in Pinellas, and before that, I ran a food pantry for 13 years called Echo over in Brandon. So altogether, I have about 19 years of experience in nonprofits, different agencies. So I'm very excited to be on this side of the grant making process. It's been very interesting to read the different grants and seeing different people's perspectives, and really excited to help the community in this role.
Great. We've got a lot of valuable experience in this group. Thank you very much for being here. And Emery, you're a member of the committee, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, let me. There,
oh, there you are. All right.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Emery Ivery. I'm the Chief Impact Officer for the Northern Region, which includes Pinellas, Hillsborough County with United Way Suncoast. Been with United Way Suncoast since 2006 here in the Tampa area, but most of my career has been with United Way, starting in Cleveland, Ohio, moving to Tacoma, Washington with United Way there. I was in Orlando for about 10 years, but found my home here in the Tampa Bay area and looking forward to participating in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Emery. And I couldn't, not introduce Carl Lavender, although I'm not sure that he's on the committee. I think he is an observer, but are you on the committee, Carl?
I am a listener today, and then on the team for review on the Plan A or B or
B, right?
B
next
or
week.
E or E, right?
Right. That's great. Always good to have you. Tell them who you are in case they don't know you.
Good. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Carl Lavender, and I am the Chief Equity Officer at Foundation for a Health St. Petersburg, and I have been in that position now for 90 days and been on staff almost 2 years. I came on staff as Chief Investment Officer and got promoted recently, if you will, at my age even. to being equity officer. I have been in the business of nonprofit leadership management and community organizing for 45 years. Ooh. Celebrating 45 years this year. So I've served on the Allegheny board. I've been on Florida Health Foundation board. So I've been on the board of directors side of grant making for many years. And I'm glad to be a part of the team here to help decide what happens next with County Cares money.
Thank you, Carl. And I would never want to leave out the money lady, Bette Anthony. So Betty, would you like to introduce yourself? Are you there, Betty?
Can you hear
She
me
might
now?
be on mute.
I'm Bette Anthony, the Director of Finance at Pinellas Community Foundation. Been with the organization for about 2.5 years now. And my background has been in not-for-profit organization. I was director of a controller and director of finance at RCS for over 20 years, and in public accounting before that. So I'm kind of on the periphery, or maybe at the tail end of the process here. I'll be responsible for making the payments once the grant award decisions have been made and a schedule of payments has been determined.
Thank you, Betty. Have I missed anyone now? I'm sorry, I might have done that. I think I've got it covered. So thank you all for being willing to serve. As I said before, this is going to be no small job, but I think it'll be fun and rewarding because we know we're helping people really directly, and I think that's very exciting. So again, thank you for serving. Thanks, staff. By the way, if someone calls you, and by the way, when you are on a grants panel of any kind, you will get phone calls from people that know you're on that grant panel, and they may start asking you questions. There would be a lot of wisdom on your part that you refer all questions to Sherry and not try to answer them yourself. It really is a very slippery slope if you start down that road. So there's a lot of wisdom in handing it off to the experts, and they can say, well, she said, whatever that is, but they don't have to say that you said it. So that's my counsel to you from experience on these kinds of things. Everybody got the meeting packet and all the information you need for a full discussion today. Let's talk for a minute. And I just want to emphasize once again the transparency issue, because I want you to be sure that you're aware that this is a publicly aware meeting, and people will be able to access information. Whatever you say, whatever you do related to the grant is going to be public information. So there you go. You just ought to keep that in mind. So let's talk for a minute about conflict of interest, and I might turn to Sherry or Duggan if you want to talk about this at all. But I want you to be aware that if you are involved with an organization in which there's any direct benefit for you, and all of you bring such fantastic backgrounds that it's going to be hard to say my finger is not on that one, my fingerprint is not on that one. But the truth is, it is really whether you're getting any direct benefit from the organization. And there is a conflict of interest document that was included with your package that you should utilize if you're in a situation. I always think it's good to also announce that you have a conflict of interest, so that that's an awareness to everyone that's the way it is, that maybe why you're not responding to questions or haven't even responded to the application. Duggan or Sherry, do you want to talk any more about that?
I would just say the only other thing to add to that, I'm waiting on some guidance from our attorney as to whether what happens if a conflict arises during the process. So you might not have a conflict today. Maybe you're not a board member connected to any charity that has ever said it's going to apply, but then all of a sudden they do, whether that precludes a committee member from continuing to serve in the future, if that we just need to end their relationship there, or if they would be able to sit out the round that grant would be discussed, not participate at all, and then become a part of the process later. And so as soon as we get guidance on that, I will send that out to everybody. That was a question that was raised to us. What happens if I have no conflict now, but then all of a sudden a conflict develops? So we'll get guidance for you on that.
The only thing that I would add is, in full transparency, all of our committee members have signed the conflict of interest form via DocuSign, and we have those for our records, along with staff. All staff members that are working on the project have also signed that as well.
Okay. Any questions about that? Well, questions may come up along the way, so don't hesitate to ask Sherry or Duggan whether there is a problem, but mostly I think you're probably aware of it already. You know that we have a bi-weekly meeting, so this group will meet again in 2 weeks, but as Carl said, there's another group meeting that will be next Thursday. I'm the lead dog for that one too, so I may be a connector along, of course, with all the staff. And so I hope that you will clear your calendars for the Thursdays that have been sent to you by Brittany from 1 to 3 and plan on those. I know there are unexpected things that come up, but it's really important to have, this is a fairly small committee for the work that we're going to be doing. So it's really important to have you there. So I hope that you can be a full participant all the time. That being said, I've already announced that I'm leaving at 2:30 today because I had a doctor's appointment that I couldn't change. But I have cleared my calendar for the rest of the year, believe me, on Thursday afternoons from 1 to 3. So there we go. I think that's, oh, Carl and Ayako, you're on both committees, are you?
Yes, ma'am, I am. I'm a listener on one and a reviewer on the other.
Okay, and how about you?
And I'm a reviewer on A and a listener on B.
Oh, okay, great. Oh, that's wonderful to have you connecting with those two, both of you. So that's great. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how this meeting will go. So we'll stick to our 2-hour time frame, and I've asked Sherry to take over if I have to leave at 2:30 and the meeting is not completed. And so we're going to move right through the applications. So I think it's one of the things that we should decide on is how we're going to decide on the recommendations that we're making. Are we arriving in a consensus way, or are we going to take a vote every time? Does the vote need to be unanimous, and so on? So let's talk about that for a minute. What is your preference? And Sherry, you may pitch in here right off the get-go.
Absolutely. So my hope would be that you all, after reviewing the committee minutes and the actual summary sheets, you all will know as reviewers how everyone scored. And so it might be, I think, easiest if you look at those applications, maybe you all establish some sort of cutoff. Those that are above this particular score will be ones that you all will move to the let's go ahead and fund them group. The ones at the bottom, perhaps not take up too much time discussing those, not unless there's a reviewer who wants to have a great deal of input, and maybe move them up to the middle. And maybe you all will just discuss the ones that are in the middle. That might be the easiest thing to do given the interest of time. Of course, today we don't have that many applications to review, but we do anticipate that as time goes on, you all will have several applications to review. And so I encourage you to think about moving these to a yes. I'm grateful that we do have the nonprofits actually on the phone with us. So as questions arise, if you're talking about a specific nonprofit, we can unmute the call for them to respond back, and they will have 3 minutes to respond back to your question. I think it's equally as important that as you all have reviewed your comments, Dr. Barbara Morrison Rodriguez, as the evaluator, will also provide comments and feedback regarding the evaluation. And we do have the opportunity to, if things need to be done, once you all move to approve prior to going to contract, if there's some updates that need to be done either to evaluation, to the budget narratives, we do have the ability to do that, providing the nonprofit is willing to do that in conjunction with the contract and actually prior to the contract being signed. So that would be my suggestion, just to ensure that we've got plenty of time. But I think in the 2-hour allotment, you all will have enough time to discuss each individual application.
Okay. Any questions?
Nope.
So you have you have gotten a summary of the submitted requests. That was really helpful. Thank you for sending that, Sherry. Did everybody get that?
Yes, we did.
You know what I'm talking about. Okay, great. And so we can make decisions. This might be the easiest week that we have of all weeks, because we could make decisions on 3 of them or not. I'm sorry, on 4 of them. I really would like to ask about the St. Petersburg Free Clinic and take a moment on that, because that for me scored pretty high on my list, but I noticed that they then the applicant asked for the application to be in draft status so that they could do some revisions. So Sherry, would you like to discuss that?
Sure. So if you notice on your summary sheet, there are several nonprofit applications that are before you. There are some of them that have been denied because of eligibility requirements. Part of our requirements are that, number 1, projects must be aligned with the 3 funded strategies: food insecurity, behavioral health, and eviction mitigation through legal aid. All must be directly related and justified via challenges as a result of COVID-19. So you will see that there are 2 applications that appear on there that have been denied because those projects did not meet the initial eligibility criteria. Specifically with the St. Petersburg Free Clinic, we did receive that application, staff reviewed that application, but as you might be aware, we are not the only ones that review applications. Pinellas County government, along with others, are also reviewing applications to include the fiscal pieces, so the budget summary and the budget narrative. And the organization is actually going to go back and revise both of those areas and resubmit. So you will see, or a committee, it's likely going to be Committee B, that will actually see that application, but the organization is very interested in applying. The metrics and the things that they have outlined, their programmatic services, are absolutely aligned with the work that we're doing, but they wanted to go back and add some additional information into their budget narrative and into their budget summary to ensure that we can clearly see how it is that they intend to spend the funds. So that is why that one was actually removed from the list to be reviewed today at their request, but that application will be coming back to you very soon.
Okay. Sarah,
So
did you want to? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So how is it determined whether or not an agency can request an amount that exceeds the $250,000 maximum?
So there actually is no maximum. The $250,000 is simply a place for them to have a conversation with me, the senior program officer. We do want to ensure that applications that are over the $250,000 amount have a few things and are able to comply with, number 1, expending the funds by December the 30th. That's the most important thing. Number 2, we want to ensure that they are clearly aligned with the work and that these are expansion projects of COVID-19. Number 3, we also want to include that they are not expenditures for large capital, because there are some things that we cannot do with the funding. We cannot purchase a building, things of that nature. So we want to ensure that those kind of requests, we as staff have had a conversation with the nonprofit to ensure that they are clearly aligned with the work, most importantly to ensure that it can happen within the time specifications of about 4 months. So the $250,000 is not a threshold amount. We do expect to see applications in great excess of that, but we do ask that those specific partners will reach out and have a conversation with me first.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And is that what happened with the St. Petersburg Free Clinic?
Actually, in that case, no. They'd actually reached out. They'd actually had a conversation with me. They just needed to update their budget narrative and put in some additional details. I can't underscore the importance of the physical piece of this, and that projects can actively explain not just the work that they're doing, but how it is directly COVID related, and then give justification for that information. That is something that is required, that we have a lot of fiduciary responsibility around.
Sarah, did you want to make any comments on that, or is that we got it covered? We pretty much.
Everything sounds good to me.
Okay, so we'll see that again, and
yes.
It's a work in progress, and we'll look forward to it returning. Right. So let's maybe start up from the bottom of this list. That is the ones that are decisions that need to be made in their requested summary. So I'm looking at the Senior Sunshine Series, Inc. It's a chicken in every pot, as we know, as we read the grant. So is there any comments that you'd like to make? And you may want to look back at the, I don't know what you call it, the score sheet with the comments on it. That was helpful to me, at least, to have a kind of a take on what other people saw and know of the organization. So anybody like to pick up on this one? Nobody wants to do anything? I'm not seeing any hands raised.
I will say that I thought it was a pretty straightforward program. My only it's not a concern, it's just a thought. In reviewing the smaller asks and the smaller organizations, they're not including that 10% de minimis. And I thought that maybe when we work with them on the budgets to include that as a buffer for the smaller organizations that may not be used to these federal grants and the compliance that goes into it. You tell them a weekly report or a monthly report, and that seems very doable in the moment. But that extra 10% I think is really going to be helpful.
So thank you for that, Sarah. That's very helpful because I couldn't agree more. And especially these small organizations, but even the larger ones, that is really something that, as a matter of fact, some grant writers just aren't accustomed to putting in because it doesn't happen in a lot of cases. So I think it's certainly worth going back and working with them to see if that would be appropriate.
Okay.
Sherry, did you want to say something?
Yes, I was going to say, so Sarah, we can absolutely include that. We can have a conversation, with the nonprofits. We want it to be sensitive to perhaps folks might not have needed it. And maybe that's why they didn't request it. But I do think that it's important, as you just stated, that especially for our smaller nonprofits, I would say even our larger nonprofits, they need support in other ways. And the de minimis cost is part of that. So I absolutely can go back and have a conversation with them. And if you all move to recommend this one for funding, I will have a conversation with them. And if they indeed do want to add that in there, that we will allow them to update their budget narrative in some way to include that. So you will see a 10% increase over what they have asked us for.
So questions, comments?
And just keep in mind, the nonprofit is on the line. So there is the opportunity for us to unmute them if you would like to hear from them directly about that. Or I'm happy to work with them, behind the scenes to answer those questions and can absolutely be responsive to the committee afterwards.
Well, since they're here, I think it's actually a great idea to ask them if they have anything that they'd like to say about that proposal. I don't know how to unmute them so that they can.
Give us just a moment. Brittany is behind the scenes along with David, and they will unmute the representative.
So Jim, you'll be allowed to talk now. You'll have to unmute yourself though.
*6 or something.
Mm-hmm.
He got it. Jim? Says he's unmuted.
Jim, are you on the line? Jim, perhaps if you could, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, guys. Thank you very much for your patience. We've been running Senior Sunshine Series since 2016. We started with 100 chickens. It was the first goal for several months of 2016. 1,000 chickens in 2017, 2018. Last year we did over 3,600. Now that was 18 chickens, 1,800 delivered to food banks. We like to bring these to food banks because many cases they have boxes, cans, they have drives, they don't have access to meat. They have to settle for whatever they might get from donations through Feeding Tampa Bay. Some of them have to buy it all retail. So we're somewhat of a boutique. We've been working with 4 food banks as well as private events. So we work with the High Point Community Foundation. Every Monday they're giving out food. Okay, they think it's a big treat when we could put a 6-pound chicken in each of those bags that go. Also been working with St. Dunstan's and other religious organizations, 3 different outlets with Catholic Charities, primarily Pinellas Hope. I have a background in finance. I retired 4 years ago, and I've been doing this ever since. Half of our funding comes from singing. We're a bunch of old guys, a trio of guys that sing in nursing homes. It's the Silly Sinatras. So if you're checking out our LPOs, they may probably know of us as the Silly Sinatras, because when we hand those chickens in these direct events, we also sing Frank Sinatra music.
Jim, if you could please respond back to the question specifically regarding the fact that you did not include the 10% de minimis cost.
Yeah, Sherry, I'd be glad to, Sherry.
Thank you.
In the early communication, we had some, I showed my inexperience in grant writing. We've been just funded through our donors and through our performances, and I wasn't aware really of that ramification. Now, what we're planning to use this money for is a surge in check-ins. There has been a surge in 2 of the food banks we've been working with. The other ones, they still seem to be holding their own. I'm thinking, depending upon the unavailability of some of the government funding, that this surge money will definitely use the extra $1,200 that would give us a little bit of, because we support food banks in other ways besides check-ins. Okay, there's an egg supplement, so we may need to do events or specific supplements as needed with our food bank partners. So yeah, I agree, we would want to revise the application, Cherry. Thank you.
Thank you for responding back to that, Jim. So with their consent, I will work with Jim as the lead for this organization. We will revise their budget narrative to reflect the 10% de minimis costs added on, specifically to cover the administration of the grant.
Yeah, that's really the emphasis, is the administration of the grant, not to buy more food.
Exactly.
Okay.
So just a question for process then. So are we in agreement then that we should support this and have that be revised afterwards, or are we holding off on that decision until we get a revised budget and then?
So my suggestion would be that we get the money to partners now in the interest of time. And so if it would be admissible with the committee, I would suggest that we move forward knowing that we will add the 10%. If you all are in agreement with that, move forward to fund the project, knowing that project staff will adjust, allow them to adjust their budget narrative, and that will be included when they go to contracting, just that we can move to a yes, and that program services can begin as soon as possible.
That works for me.
Okay. Would you like to make that in the form of a motion that we approve that, Emery?
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve the grant request with the understanding that the 10% admin will be added on to that the request amount.
Is there a second?
I second.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Madam Chair, may I add here that the grant recipient, I recommend, would not announce the grant until they receive an official correspondence from the CARES Act committee. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Carl. Thank you. Good point. I didn't see who seconded the motion. Did you?
Ayakio.
Okay. Thank you, Ayakio. Okay. Any discussion? Good point, Carl. That's one that we'll want to remember for all of the grant recipients. All in favor of Emery's motion, say aye. Raise your hand. The best way to do it.
Aye.
Is there any opposition? Okay. We got one going here. All right, let's go up to the next one, Feast. Requesting $43,000 and $43,042 for providing food and personal care. There was some interesting commentary on Feast. It was easy to understand, pretty straightforward what it did. I personally went on, I live probably a mile from where Feast does their distribution. And I noticed today there was a huge lineup of cars waiting again today as I was coming back from a meeting this morning. But I was disappointed in their website. It didn't tell me who their board members are. It's just, it's a small organization that doesn't have a lot of infrastructure, I guess is the best way to put it. But I think they do an excellent job. And unless people see anything that is problematic with this grant application.
I had a question.
Okay.
My question was, I noticed as I read it that they provide both food and personal care items. So my question is, are we funding the personal care items? Or is that even included? When I looked at that 27,000, my question was, is any part of that 27,000 supplies for personal care, and are we funding that?
That's a very good question. I don't know.
David, can you please unmute the program representative to answer that question? And then I will provide feedback to staff when they finish answering.
Hello.
Hi, Tamara. You've got 3 minutes to respond back to the question, please.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you for having us. We're very excited for the opportunity. In response to your question, we really weren't going to use that money to purchase personal care items. It was all slotted to get food donations, or I mean, to purchase food. In fact, we did some projections on our numbers. In the month of July, we saw 2,300 people that we fed that came through our doors. In the past, we were only seeing about 1,000 people every month. So we've had a huge increase in people. Our projections show that between September and December, we're gonna see over 12,000 people. So what we did when we looked at our food cost, what it means when we see 12,000 people with an average family size of 2.7, we're gonna see about 4,600 families. So what we wanted to do was provide food staples to those 4,600 families. So we estimated about $6 per family. What that'll do is allow us to buy 2 boxes of pasta, 2 cans of soup, and 1 box of cereal, roughly, for each family. Those are things right now, our shelves are bare. Like if you go back and look right now, it's really upsetting and troubling because we just don't have food for our clients. We've never seen this type of demand. So what we wanted to do was purchase those food items, so those traditional staples that families need, they'll receive. I hope did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Tamara. And that is consistent with what also appears in the updated budget narrative that they have submitted. All of the supply cost is directly for food.
So to the question about board not showing up on the website, do we have a list of board members? I think that's important because it looks like they're going through some leadership transition.
Yes, and I totally agree. That's one of the things actually we've been working on is updating our website and our social media presence. Although it still there's a lot of opportunity for growth. This is actually a revised version of what we had 2 months ago. There has been a leadership change. We do have a list of board members. We would be happy to provide those to you, or anything else that you need or anything you think our website is lacking, we're happy to provide.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do think we should have a list of board members. And if you would be sure that Sherry gets that, Tamara, that would be great. Thank you. Tamara, what is your role? Are you the executive?
Oh, getting her back. Sorry, I thought we were done.
Yes, I just took over that position a couple months ago, the executive director. So we've had a lot of changes with the COVID and our leadership team. So we'll be happy to supply that list of board members and anything else.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank
David?
you.
Okay.
David, did you have something you wanted to?
No, I had accidentally muted her when we weren't done asking questions. So we're good now.
Okay. Any discussion on this issue? Anything related to Feast? Is there a motion to support this grant application?
I'd make a motion, this is Sarah, make a motion to support pending the updated documentation on the board.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Emery, was that you?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Raise your hand is the easiest thing, I think. I can never quite get it in the camera. Okay, thank you very much. All right, it's unanimous. Tamara, you're on your way. Okay, House of Mercy and Encouragement Foundation, Inc. Any questions or concerns here? I want to take a minute and look at the notes again, so if you don't mind.
I have a question. Did I miss something? And they were asking for reimbursement, and one of the things the documentation that I read is that they needed to provide either bank statements or things of that nature. And I did not see that. Did I miss that?
No.
So you did not miss that. And there are two parts, so everyone's familiar with the application. You can seek reimbursement for prior expenses under this application, and we are going to need clear documentation, just like we're going to need clear documentation going forward. Once you've expended, whether or not we're advancing your funds or not, we're going to need clear documentation of those expenditures. And in this case, the expenditures look good, but we saw order forms pretty much, but not actual, transactions, completed transactions. So in that case, before we would issue any reimbursement check, even though it's not here today, we would handle that in the fiscal part of this, but the expenses seemed reasonable and COVID related. We just need better documentation.
Yeah, I agree. I saw the list and they seemed reasonable. I just was wondering what we're going to require further documentation. Thank you.
Other questions?
Sally, this is Barbara Morrison Rodriguez. I have some evaluation comments on this particular grant application, if I may. Okay, one of the things that happens sometimes as you start a process and you review, you realize that there is some information you should have asked of the grantees that you did not ask. So we have made, at my request and with the agreement of the team, some small modification to the grant application, and because it'll put the comments I'm about to make in context, and I think we caught it early, so all future applications can address that. One of the things that I think is particularly important for the behavioral health grants, first of all, I think we need to acknowledge that 5 months is a short time to deal with behavioral health issues, even in the context of a crisis. So I think that needs to be respected. However, I do think it's important that the providers of behavioral health services are able to define for us, given the clinical tools that they have mentioned, what their definition of progress would be. Even if people are not fully recovered, from month to month, how would you assess whether they are making progress in the desired direction, whether it's their clinical outcomes or outcomes from a personal development plan or clinical plan that you might develop for them? So I am asking that in addition to telling us what kind of clinical tools they're going to use under the measurement section, we have added a methodology section, which I'm hoping to keep very simple. But within that, I would like to know, given the tools you are using, how are you going to analyze and report the data from the application of those clinical tools to tell us in your monthly reporting what percentage of your participants are making progress? You get to define how that progress will measure, what the benchmarks are that have to be met for you to say that someone is making progress. That is your decision. You have to explain it to us so that we can see what that looks like. So all of the behavioral health projects would be asked to come up with some kind of measurement, clinical measurement definition of progress from month to month. We did ask you in the original application an overarching question of how many of your participants you thought would improve by the end of the project. We're now asking you, in addition, to track some degree of improvement and report that on a monthly basis. So having said that, that's one of the things that I think needs to be added to the House of Mercy application, is the new information we have requested in the application. I thought the project design was good. I thought that the measures that they articulated are perfectly appropriate for the kind of clinical interventions that they are doing, but I would like some assessment of progress over time.
Would you like me
Thank
to
you, Barbara.
unmute
That
for
would
them
be
to
fine. That is fine, absolutely.
Okay, are there any questions or comments, reactions to Barbara's recommendation?
I would just say I appreciate the comment, and I totally agree.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's, you know, it's why you're here, Barbara. You're elevating this to another level that I think we do need to do. So good for you. And thank you for catching that early so that we can, instead of all the applicants.
I agree with the recommendation too, and I appreciate that you highlighted the fact of realistically what can be done in 5 months. We do know counseling can take years, but what is realistic that can be done?
Correct.
I also agree. I did have another question on this application regarding, I know it's an existing program with existing counselors, and I just wanted some clarification. It could come on the back end with the budgets on what balance of existing program, like what are we supplementing due to COVID as opposed to what is their regular staffing model to make sure that we're not supplanting any funds. But that would be that was my only concern with the application.
So we have
Madam Chair, the applicant is on the call. May I recommend that we organize the questions so the applicant answer the questions in order they receive?
Okay. So I think the first one is responding to Barbara's comments earlier. And then Sarah, your comments as well. I think that was it. Dolores?
Yes, I'm sorry. Okay, so basically everyone would be given a FARS or a CFARS in the beginning, you know, and so to go along with that, they would have a treatment plan, and the treatment plan would be the overall goals, but then it would be divided into objectives that we could break down and just say, you know, how they're progressing on that. I don't know if you would like a Likert kind of scale, like 1 to 5. How are they doing on that particular goal, whether they have achieved it or that objective, whether they have achieved it or not. I think there are some other things that, you know, when you talk about behavioral health is things that we don't necessarily think about, and that would be attendance. Are they engaged? Are they attending all the time? So we could talk about that. And then also follow through. If they're given homework, are they following through with the homework? We can report on that. How motivated are they to achieve their goals? And so, you know, I could write that up a little bit better so that you could understand and possibly send in, you know, how we would do that, what it would look like.
Dolores, this is Barbara. I would say, being an evaluator, I would love to see you do all of those things, but do what you can manage. I think some kind of a Likert scale, if you're comfortable with it, only because I think it, you know, it quantifies the performance in a way that makes it easier to look at. Certainly retention for all of these programs, all of the behavioral health programs, I think are significant. And I anticipate that attention may be challenged because of people's need to deal with things that come up with COVID. That's one of the problems in trying to do this kind of work in this environment, is that people are distracted by so many other things. So I do think retention would be helpful. Of the things that you mentioned, what I would say is this: do as robust a job as you can, but don't make the evaluation requirements so burdensome that they get in the way of delivering the service. So you tell us what you think is manageable. That is your definition of how you're going to monitor performance given the population that you're working with. The measures that you mentioned, I think, are perfectly appropriate. You know how those things are scored. You know how they are interpreted. You seem to have some experience with them. So I would just like to see a little bit of a revision of the evaluation component, what we're calling the methodology, which builds that out a little bit more. And from the conversation, I think you understand exactly what it is that I'm asking for.
Okay, thank you.
And Sarah, did you get your question answered? I don't know whether it really talked about supplanting any of the program information.
Yeah, I can clarify. I just want to assure, it seems like it was a established program. So any funding that we would be using for counselor salary, I want to assure that that's not regular counselor salary that we would be funding.
Right. And when I did the grant, that's what I was basing it on, not on what we already have, but just will be needed between September and December. And then I broke it down into, as on the application, you know, about how many new people we would have. And so if we know how many new people we have, then we know how, you know, what the therapists are being directly paid for those particular new clients, and the other people that are working, like the outreach coordinator, who will probably deliver some of the packets and things like that.
Okay, that's good. I mean, as long as you understand it's the COVID-19 related, it's not the folks that have been in the system already, but those that are really directly related to COVID-19. That's what this money is about. So be sure that you can acknowledge that. And
Sally,
Barbara, yes.
I wanted to add in that we'll work with Dolores to get a little bit more clear budget narrative before the contract is finalized. But to that end, this has really tripped up some of our grantees. So today we released a new budget narrative for the application, which has very clear instructions per line item that indicates you have to demonstrate the relation to COVID-19, demonstrate that this is an expansion over what you have originally designed as your program. And then we did a short 4-minute video for grantees as well. It's embedded in the application now. So hopefully they'll get some more experience with that and know exactly what we're asking for going forward.
Okay. So I have a question. So does that mean that there's more information coming that I need to complete? That, like,
yes,
handed in has been revised, or there's an appendix to it or whatever?
Yes. So what we'll do is we'll work with you to clarify the budget narrative a little bit more, to add in exactly what we just talked about in answer to Sarah's question. And we'll work with you to get that done before we sign the contract.
Okay, thank you.
And that will also include your updates to your evaluation as well.
Okay.
Those new metrics will also be included. Dr. Barbara Morrison Rodriguez is also available for technical assistance if you have specific questions about that as well.
Okay.
So what's the desire of staff? Should we go ahead and take action on this one?
Yes, please.
That it's a work in progress?
Yes, our suggestion would be that if you all so move to approve it, staff will work with House of Mercy to revise their evaluation, as well as update the budget narratives to reflect the questions that have been raised today. It sounds as though the organizational representative, Dolores, is in agreement with those and understands what those changes need to be.
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, Stacy.
If an agency is working, I know it's supposed to be for expansion or additional people, but if they're working with a client already and the client is now exhibiting greater anxiety or needs more treatment due to COVID, can they use the funding for the existing client because their anxiety is due to COVID?
Absolutely. So let's say if they're working with a client already and they're seeing the client once a month, but due to challenges with COVID, which we're oftentimes seeing, clients need more intensive care weekly, then they would have to justify to us, this client is experiencing these COVID-related issues and challenges, and this is how we are now working with them, because that would be the expansion piece.
Okay, great, thank you.
But they would have to justify that and help us understand how this is now different than what they were doing prior. So the level that they're working with the client, the individual programmatic services are different than what they were doing prior to. That would be part of the justification for us to understand that.
Okay, thank you.
And when can I expect that in an email that will come? Like,
So immediately following this call in the next 24 hours, we will roll your application back to draft, and you can go ahead and make those updates based upon the comments that you've heard today, Dolores.
okay, so it's online. Okay.
Yes, we will roll your application back to draft status for you to make those updates.
Okay, thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Is there a motion to approve the $45,936 for House of Mercy and Encouragement Foundation with revisions as discussed? I'm sorry, I think, was it you, Emery, that said you moved it?
So moved, yep.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Bill, seconded.
Yes.
Is there discussion or questions? This has been a really good discussion. Thank you, Barbara, for, kind of elevating that picture, because we really need to know that. And I'm glad we discovered it early in the game. And you can work with Dolores on this. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand.
Aye.
Raise your hand. I keep forgetting to say that. Is there anyone opposed? Thank you all. And Boys and Girls Clubs of the Suncoast, Inc. Mental health program. So let me just have a minute too to take a look at notes. Okay, I see there were a number of kind of out there questions. I'm sure somebody will be on the phone. Is somebody on the phone from Boys and Girls Clubs?
We have multiple. I will unmute. Do we have questions ready?
I don't know yet. Let's see if there's
I will unmute their grant writer, and then if she needs to refer to someone,
sure,
she can.
She can turn it over to them. Okay. Any questions? Comments?
Sally, I'll jump in on the evaluation things first and get that out of the way.
That's good.
It's going to be a similar request for the one we made of House of Mercy, that you go back and develop that area around the metrics and the methodology. Let me say that I think this particular design is a bit more complicated, and I'd like to unpack it a little bit in order to be able to address some of these issues. First of all, let me say I think that these are good organizations. I have worked with the Well for Life. I think they do excellent work. They're going to be a wonderful logistical partner. I did find, though, the measurement section of the application very thin. However, they did technically meet what we asked for. We asked them for measurement, and they listed the clinical tools that they're going to use, at least in terms of content. But I would like to see more development of that in a couple of specific areas. As I read this grant, it has at least three populations that it's looking at. It's services, behavioral health services for youth and or their families. And then there is a professional staff training component. And I would like for the team to address how the professional staff development component is COVID related. Because as I read it, that professional staff development component, to my understanding, looks at increasing the staff understanding and competency more in the area of cultural competence and equity-based practice. And I'd like some clarification on exactly what it is that you want the staff trained in. And what is it about the COVID environment that makes that especially worthy of support, given the mandate and focus of this training? In other words, is this training that you would do under any circumstance, or is there something about COVID that's making the training more critical? I would like more information on the measures. They are kind of listed almost, well, we have this kind of measure or that kind of measure. I would like a little bit more development of what those actual measures are, more of a description of them and their properties. I'd also like to know the experience of the team in using the instruments that you said you're going to be using. What is your experience in using them? I also would like to see you again develop something around how you will measure progress over time. So you've got several different kinds of instruments that you listed out. What I would want to know is, given the nature of those instruments, how will you be applying them? Also, what would be the cut points, for example, in a particular measure that would tell you someone is making progress? So what I'm looking for are what the exact definition of progress is for each of those three populations, using the instruments that you've selected for each of them. So I guess what I'm asking you to do is more of a methodological development of what are the changes you expect to see in your participants, youth, family, and the training, if we agree that the training is a component of it. How will you assess them early at baseline? What are you planning to see in terms of demonstrable changes over time toward progress? And what does that progress look like as measured by the instruments that you've outlined? So that's what I would like to see in terms of development on the measurement and methodology piece.
Okay, that's a load. So
my comment to that, and I appreciate Dr. Rodriguez's perspective, wondering how, to what extent, Dr. Rodriguez, they can take that particular position and make it a 90-day plan. In other words, by the time you receive your dollars, gear up for your workforce, put things in action, you really are scaling back within 60 days of the grant announcement. Is this your recommendation adaptable in a time frame that we have? I'm just curious about that, please.
It is, Carl, and that's one reason why I asked about experience in working with the measures. If these are things that they've been using all along in their practice, then the adaptation should not be that difficult, which is why I'm asking. And I think if they feel that they need, first of all, when I looked at this, their projections for the number of participants they would take in September is 0, if I recall. I think there is actually, no patient load, participant load in September, which means that the kinds of things I'm asking about could be worked out logistically in my mind in September, so that when they take those first clients in this particular aspect of their work that they're asking funding for, or roll them over from existing clients, they've thought more about this measurement piece. Incidentally, I'm not asking for anything that people in behavioral health don't do as an ongoing part of their good clinical practice. If they're using tools, they have to say, what are the benchmarks? How do we measure progress? So this is just a request, I think, to have it more clearly articulated in the application. I don't think this would be a stretch for them. I'm asking them to describe it better in the application.
Do you want to hear from them?
I would love to.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm unmuting Jennifer Reed. If she wants to ask another staff member, Jennifer, you can talk.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, first of all, thanks again, as echoing others, thanks for this opportunity. We're really excited about this potential partnership. And then the second thing I would say is that as the grant writer, the grant manager, it is difficult for me to address those types of questions directly. And unfortunately, Dr. Butler, who is heading the mental health project for us, is teaching a class. This is her first day of class, and so she wasn't able to join us on the call. But let me just kind of run through a couple of points that she mentioned when we were talking about this. So there are a couple of scales that she would utilize, one being professional quality of life, which would be specifically used for our staff members. And then sort of to go off of that, regular quality of life, which would go with our youth. And this would be a survey that would be administered pre and post program. There's also a social connectivity scale, which basically this is determining whether the youth have outside individuals who they feel comfortable and safe going to discuss the issues that they're experiencing surrounded COVID with the trauma. And it sort of helps determine whether there is a support network in place. Dr. Butler indicates that this can be administered monthly, and that was her intention. our main monthly measurement would be the retention rate of both youth in the program as well as our staff, and that would be like just a basic measurement measurement evaluation rate. And then we also would be administering pre and post assessments during all quality or all of our wellness activities, which would take place around once a week. We haven't quite determined the exact schedule yet. That's going to depend on timing and all of that. So I know that doesn't quite answer your question. Unfortunately, I would have to have Dr. Butler here.
Yeah.
To be
It's fine. You answered quite a bit. And the thing is, let me say one thing about retention as a measure. I think all of these programs that are behavioral health oriented should measure retention. However, just retaining somebody is, as you know, is not an assurance that they're improving. So I think that's the floor. And then I think you really need to build from there. So I'm generally familiar with the measures that were listed. So I think letting me know, for example, when you say a pre-post, that could be from month 1 to month 5. It could be the beginning of the month to the end of the month. So those pre-post intervals need to be better articulated for me to understand what that measurement pattern is going to look like.
Right, and I think Dr. Butler's idea is that it would be the weekly wellness activities that would be administered and facilitated by her staff would include pre and post assessments.
Okay, so she would basically then have to summarize those on a monthly basis. I'm not asking that those be reported weekly. I think weekly reporting for anything in the behavioral health component, except for maybe attendance, is a real challenge. It's challenging enough to measure these things on a monthly basis, let alone on a weekly basis. But that's the kind of development of that section that I would like to see. And I'm still not sure. I don't understand the staff training component as well as the work with the youth and families. And I'd like a little bit better understanding of what that staff training is really designed to accomplish. And if it's a special skill set or development, my question would be, given that this is focused on COVID, I go back to my question. Would this be a developmental track that you would want, especially if it's, and I know Dr. Butler specializes in working with minority and populations suffering from a variety of social determinants of health. That's her area of expertise, which I very much respect. But my question would be, is this a type of training you would do with staff on a regular basis because it needs to be a necessary part of their training? Or is there something about this training that makes it more important in the context of COVID? So that connection, I think, needs to be made more clear.
Right. Okay. So let me address that. The training that we're talking about would be administered by Dr. Butler and her team, and it would be, excuse me, it would be related to recognizing trauma in youth, and so that they can potentially refer these kids for further treatment to her and her staff. However, there is as you mentioned, there's another piece to this, which is the staff's own mental health in dealing with this COVID-related situation. And the reason that is so important to us right now is because our staff have been asked to undertake quite a different, I guess, atmosphere. Yes, and so not only are we limiting number ratios and things like that, but the staff are being asked to clean extra, they're being asked to wear masks, they're being asked to ensure youth are wearing masks, they're being asked to have conversations with youth that they may not be prepared to have. And so basically there's two components here. There is a component of them dealing with their own mental health and having a space to be able to articulate the things that are bothering them, but also to be able to recognize the trauma that is present in our youth, which, as we all know, is occurring more in these communities mostly that we serve. So, and I think Dr. Butler, as you mentioned, Dr. Rodriguez, she is, because of her unique specialization, I think she is uniquely a fit for our clubs, because our youth are generally from those populations. And I think that goes a long way in building trust and things of that nature. So
no argument from me on that. And one of the things I think I'd like to see you look at is a little bit more about the instrumentation you're using for the staff. I do know that there was a kind of an adjustment measure. I don't remember the exact name of it that you mentioned, so I'd be interested in that. And also, once again, what would progress look like for the staff and for the team over time? How would you assess progress? And what's realistic to assess on a month-to-month basis? So I'd just like a little bit more clarity on that from a methodological point of view.
And unfortunately, of those, I'm going to have to refer to Dr. Butler. I've sort of reached the limit of what I can, but I do think, I do think we are planning to, they are planning to administer staff quality of life. It's called professional quality of life surveys. And I don't know how often she was planning to do that, if that was monthly or if that was just pre and post program, but she definitely is going to do that.
And she may tell me that it lacks validity month to month. Maybe that's too short a time interval. I would just like, for whatever those decisions are, I'd like some justification for them.
Sure. So Barbara, you'd be willing to work with Dr. Butler to
absolutely, no problem.
Okay, so there you go, Jennifer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have
any other questions, Emery?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So if you identify kids that need further or deeper treatment, are those kids being referred then to the well? And is that covered as part of this grant?
Okay, that's a great question and one I can answer.
Okay.
Yes, it is part of the grant. In fact, it's probably the bulk of the grant would be individual counseling. And that also goes with our staff as well. We'll have those opportunities. And for right now, we are going to determine, basically it's going to be up to the family and the youth what's most comfortable for them as far as counseling. So if they are comfortable having their sessions at the clubs, or if they're not, and if their parents are willing to transport them to the Wells locations or wherever they need to be met is where we're going to make it work. So, and then Dr. Butler's plan is that once the time period is ending at the end of the year, of course, which incidentally coincides with our school year, so it actually works out okay for us because kids will be going on break and we will be closing our club for a week anyway, so the timing of it works out. But she indicated that if she feels that additional therapy is needed beyond the scope of this grant, that she would then approach the families individually and have a conversation about referrals to other treatment opportunities and options.
Okay, and just one other quick question. So are you all already staffed up to take on a project at this time of this scale?
Yes, we are, mostly because it's not going to be our staff that's mostly facilitating this. It's going to be the staff at the Well for Life. And she is definitely ready and staffed. We are intending, part of our ask in the consultant line, we are intending to hire a contractor that would be that would basically report directly to Boys and Girls Clubs, that would oversee the sort of reporting type of aspect of this project, not just reporting, but anything to do with logistics or anything of just kind of oversee the program from our side of it. That way we have a staff on board that is reporting to us as well.
Okay.
So that would require a hiring of one additional person from our end.
And as far as you know, the Well is already staffed up.
Yes, we've had multiple discussions with them and they are excited and ready to take on the project.
Okay, great.
Have you worked with the Well before?
No, this is our very first partnership with them. We have, of course, worked with Dr. Butler and other initiatives, but not specifically in the realm of mental health services to our youth. We thought the reason we chose her is because, obviously we need somebody who's licensed mental health coordinators, but also she just really gets this community that we serve, and we just felt like she was the perfect choice for it. But no, we have not worked with her in this capacity before.
Other questions, comments? Okay, what action would you like to take? I believe we could approve the requested amount with the refinements that have been suggested by Dr. Barbara Morrison Rodriguez. And she's already said that she'd work closely with Dr. Butler to get them to a point where the accountability and the measurements are where they need to be so that we feel confident that we know what's going on. Barbara, would it be okay with you if we move forward?
Absolutely. I think, you know, they're perfectly capable of doing, just for the sake of full disclosure, I have worked with the well in the past, and I've worked with Dr. Butler, and I know how capable she is. She has a good team over there, so I don't think at all this is a matter of their ability to do the work. I just want them to be a little bit better at documenting it.
Sure. Okay, great.
Great.
All right. Is there motion from one of the members of this committee?
I make a motion that we approve this proposal pending the conversation between Dr. Barbara Morrison Rodriguez, Dr. Butler, and other modifications as laid out in this discussion.
Thank you, Aiko. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
Give it to
I'll let
Stacy.
Stacy second this one. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Raise your hand. Thank you. Bill, did you raise your hand? I didn't see your hand
I did.
raised. Oh,
I
okay.
did. Okay, Sally.
Is there any opposition? Okay, thank you. All right, that looks like it takes care of the grants for today. I don't know how many we'll have coming up next time, but I'm sure there'll be more than these four. So, because I know there's a lot of work in the works right now. Is there any advice that anybody has about, you know, as Sherry is talking to the applicants, anything that you would like to see done better, or any modifications to the grant, which of course you've already talked about that in the service in the mental health field, but anything else that you would like to see?
Yes, I'm presuming that by the time the applicant comes to our forum, they're all ready for approval. And the reason why I asked that is that I thought we were time limited by the comments from the applicant. If we give one applicant more time than the other, are we in any way compromising the access to us as decision makers?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm clear about how that process works, Coach. So Cherie, could you elaborate on that? Does everyone get as much time as we gave the Boys and Girls Clubs, et cetera, or do they have 3 minutes to respond to key questions that we generate?
So this is our first meeting, and so we're trying to figure out some of the nuances. You know, we were trying to get applications out as soon as possible for you all to review so we could begin programmatic work. We have learned over the past week, almost 2 weeks now, as a staff team, things that, especially in terms of the physical nature of the work, what actually needs to be done prior to them coming to you. So I do hope and expect that some of the conversation that we had today will not be as extensive as it has been. We're hoping that, you know, in the future, Dr. Barbara Morrison Rodriguez has more time to work with the individual organizations, but you've got to remember that our cutoff date was last Monday. And so things have been moving, you know, pretty quickly. It is our expectation that the committee will take as much time as you need to respond back and to have your questions answered so you feel secure when you make that yes. At times, if there are, you know, 10 questions for one organization versus 2 for another, we can't control that. But what we can control is that folks will have, or individual organizations will have 3 minutes to respond back to you so they can keep it tight and concise, that you all can get through all the applications for that day, because it's important to me that we stick to the 2-hour window. But I do think that in future meetings, we will not have this much conversation discussion around the 2 pieces that continue to trip us up today, particularly the budget narrative and justification for the funding, along with the evaluation piece. I don't imagine or envision that in the future that will be as lengthy, but it very well could be depending upon the nature of the project and the questions that you all have.
Thank you, Cherie.
If I may, to Carl's point, I think one of the things that would be helpful, and it is fully a role that I expected to play, but I would like the committee's opinion on this, is that if in writing the application, grantees are struggling with the evaluation component before they submit, I would be happy to review that if you think it's fair and give them some feedback at the writing stage so they don't submit something and then we have to send it back for further development and evaluation. If you think, my concern would be, does that bias this process anyway? Does it favor the applicants who are willing to reach out and use my advice as compared to those who might not. I don't know any way to get around that, but I do think some earlier advice at the writing stage would be very helpful.
It's obviously going to bias the applications toward those who follow your advice, because we won't be having this discussion, but I don't think that's a bad bias in this case. But I will also say that grantees also know that there are options for technical assistance. Whether they avail themselves of that before they click the box to submit or not is really up to them. But in many of these cases, they already know the help that's available. And I will also say we have a couple, and Cherie and I talked about it today, that Cherie has sent back notes about the budget narrative and needing additional details and additional documentation, and they send it right back with the same stuff. And so we're probably not going to be moving some of those forward until they fix it. But I will say in some of these cases, it's the organization just simply won't reach out. And I don't know if it's a timing issue, a fear issue, or otherwise, but our goal is to fix some of that before it gets to committee from now on both segments.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make myself available if you thought, and you know, Doug, and you and I had this conversation from the very beginning. I think it's always easier to address it at the application stage, in the development of the application, than having to take up time at the review. So,
yeah, I
agree.
I do too. And are you suggesting you would see all of the applications, or maybe just those who meet some of the criteria and ready to move on?
Right. I think the ones where the broader committee has decided, definitely the ones that don't meet the basic criteria and will not even be considered. But I think those that have some other fatal flaws where working on the evaluation would not help may not be particularly useful. But if there are ones that you think have strengths that you want to move forward, and the only issue may be, or one of the major issues may be around the evaluation, then I think it would make sense for me to take a look at those. Because some of these are not difficult fixes. It's just a matter of helping them understand how to present it.
Yeah, I would fully support that.
And just so the committee is aware, there is a TA form that is available online for evaluation that organizations can go online when they are in the application process and reach out to Dr. Morrison Rodriguez. It's a simple form they need to complete, and she will follow up with them. So they are available to utilize that. We are ensuring that we remind nonprofits that resource is available, just like staff is available to assist them with program design and things of that nature, as well as Dr. Morrison Rodriguez, as the independent evaluator, is also looking over all the metrics and outcomes for all of the projects, not just behavioral health, but for all of them. So we are gifted in that we do have our expertise that looks over all the evaluations prior to them coming to you all in a final form.
I also think that that's helpful for your smaller nonprofits.
Yes, exactly.
Because if we're trying to engage them into this grant-making process, sometimes they need that extra help, particularly in the area of evaluation. And that helps to build the capacity, not only in the organization, but build the capacity in that community as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you're seeing a lot of the same issues, is there a way for Dr. Rodriguez to record like a short webinar so that everybody could see it, and maybe you don't have to repeat yourself with every agency?
Yeah, that may be a possibility as well. Sometimes it's broad methodology. Some of it is very specific to the nature of what the project is measuring, and that makes it hard to generalize. But that's not a bad suggestion, and I probably have on my shelf webinars and materials, because I've been teaching and consulting in this area, not quite for 45 like Carl, but about 40. So I probably have a library of material that I could easily send to people, even, maybe something that might help them if they requested it. I don't think that I would, to answer your question, I would not mind doing that. That's the short answer to your question.
Okay, other questions, comments? Okay, anything we need to move on?
Good job, Sally. Good job. Your first day, Sally. Good job.
Oh, thanks, Carl. I think the committee did a good job, and you all were very helpful. And there's going to be hiccups along the way, but I think we didn't have too many hiccups today. And Barbara, you were invaluable. Sherry, thank you so much. Brittany, Doug, and all of the staff as well, David, as well as the committee members. I'm looking at 2:30 and it is time for me to leave, but I do know we meet September 10th next time, so I'm sure that's on your calendar, and we'll have fun once again. Doug, I'm going to let you wrap up a couple of things because I think you have a couple of next steps and kind of knowledge of what people may want to know about, somebody that's calling you and says, when am I going to get my money, kind of thing.
Right. Thank you, Sally, and
Thank you,
good
Sally.
luck at your appointment. Thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely.
So just so everybody knows, next steps for this, this phase is a little bit unique in that we're pushing back to get some updates in some of the metrics and the measurement. But we also, for each of the grantees that makes it to the committee, from a fiscal standpoint, we have a fiscal analysis, a risk analysis that we do on each of the organizations. It's an internal analysis that ranks them as low, moderate, or high risk as a grantee. And high risk doesn't mean that they don't get funded. This really talks about, it informs us as a foundation as to the monitoring requirements, whether or not we will pay part of the grant in advance or not pay part of the grant in advance. And that lines up around questions about, did the organization have an audit? If they had an audit, are they subject to federal single audit already? Were there findings within their audit? And then it looks at the grant request as a percentage of their entire operating expenses to determine, if this is a big grant for an organization, and that ranks them in a low, medium, and high capacity. And then we insert some of the requirements for each of those into the grant contract. So they go through that. We make sure that we have a clearly defined budget narrative so that we know exactly what is COVID related and not. And then we complete the construction of a contract. And the grant itself, the revised grant, is included as an appendix to that. And then we move forward to get that signed by the organization. Not only does it need to be signed by an officer, generally an employed officer of the organization, so a CEO or executive director, we're also asking a board member to sign that as well, a board officer, because this is federal dollars. And we want the boards to understand that there are requirements for the federal dollars and the federal grant that they're obligating their organization to, even if it's $15,000 or $10,000, those are not going to be the typical grant amounts, but a board needs to understand that there are specific federal requirements and that we'll be following up. We will be getting reports, we will be getting financial reports and other information to complete our part of the bargain as the agency that's receiving, at least on the first end, the federal dollars. And then once the contract is signed, then we will be issuing payment or partial payment if they're eligible for prepayment of part of the grant, or going forward to start the process where they can begin reporting their expenditures to the foundation and we can reimburse them as well. So I wanted everyone to know there's a fiscal process. We have retained a firm that is also helping through the first few phases, look at all of the budget narratives, looking at the expenditures, and then looking at the kind of final package that's put together to make sure that we have classified the grantee correctly. And then after the contract is done and slightly before payment, an agency will have to go through a training with us that goes over all of their fiscal requirements, all of the reporting requirements for fiscal, all of the reporting requirements for programmatic reporting. And so that they will have an opportunity to go through a training on that. And then we'll provide technical assistance along the way if they need help with that as well. And probably after the first or second training, it'll be a webinar style that they can watch a recorded training and then answer a few questions around, but that'll cover all the federal guidelines and otherwise. That'll be quite extensive. So we'll do that before the first payment is made. But the idea is to get that done in a very short time frame, get their understanding of the compliance requirements, and then get the money moving as quickly as possible. So that's next steps. And I told Sally I'd go over that, so everyone knows it doesn't just go from committee to check writing. You know, we got a couple things between the two, but I think the contract will also help us make sure that grantees know exactly what's expected of them, and formalize everything for them as if they didn't know when they got into the application. But also now on our FAQs on the website, there's an example of the contract that the grantee can go ahead and look at, the example templated contract, if they want to see even the basic requirements that they'll be held to. And we'll be working with them all along, because there's weekly reporting that's due and monthly reporting that's due. But we've got a great team that's working on all of this, so they'll have help along the way.
Good. Will Brittany post this meeting in video format onto your website for future reference from people?
Yes. So all of our meetings are recorded, and so they will be posted on the web. The applications are available to the public on the web. So what you saw, what you reviewed, the public is able to access those as are already posted.
Perfect.
The contracts will be posted. And so the public can see the contracts that are executed with the organization. The reporting will be public, so you can see progress reporting as well. The public will be able to access that. And then you'll be able to access all the recordings of the meetings. The grantees can as well. So if there's somebody who needs to play back pieces of today's meeting to get some clarification over what we talked about, they can replay that as well. So that's an option for them too.
Great.
So we're rocking and rolling.
Yes, we are.
You were the first group out, so thank you. So
Yaki, are we up next week, huh? You're gonna score. You'll be listening while I'm scoring next week, huh?
Yes, I'm listening next week.
Listening and definitely adding value. So
yes, and for those who might not know the reason for that, we're trying to bring some continuity between the committees, so we can keep this moving, and we don't have to have the same group of people reviewing everything, but having both Ayakio and Carl here, and then we have our staff here and Sally as well. It'll bring some continuity between the two. So if we have behavioral health questions that spill over from one week to the other, or questions about why this applicant is applying for this but not this applicant, we've got voices at both committees that are consistent.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
It's a great idea. Nice to see you, Ayakio.
Good seeing you too, Carl.
Yes.
Hi, Ayakio. It's been a long time.
Hi, Dr. Barbara. I owe you some lunch, breakfast, or something.
When the world opens up, I'll take you up on it.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everybody, very much.
Okay.
I'll look forward to seeing you on September the 10th at 1 p.m. That's our next meeting date.
Great job, Cherie. Great job, Brittany. Great job, David.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
See you on September the 10th. Bye-bye.